Welcome to Maine Voices live stream. Before we begin, some messages from our sponsors.
Hey, Maine. How are you? Yes, you. How are you really? It's a question we rarely ask ourselves. But to Northern Light Health, how you are means a lot. So we're out here asking and encouraging you to ask the people in your life, starting with yourself. So ask away. Then connect with us at northernlighthealth.org/howareyou.
The Portland area's trusted choice for senior living, Stroudwater Lodge, gives Maine seniors independence and families peace of mind. Residents enjoy chef-prepared meals, unique programming like beer brewing or classes led by local artists, along with all the maintenance-free benefits of community living. With their sister community, Avita, specializing in memory care on the same campus, Maine families have a wide variety of care options in a beautiful wooded setting, yet minutes from downtown Portland. To learn more, visit stroudwaterlodge.com.
And now we'll turn things over to DJ Martin.
Good evening and welcome to Maine Voices Live. I'm DJ Martin, Director of Advertising for the Portland Press Herald. We are thrilled to have muralist Ryan Adams as our first 2023 Maine Voices Live guest. Tonight, he'll be interviewed by arts writer Jorge Arango. Ryan's background in traditional graffiti led him to creating large-scale mural work, as well as hand-lettered design and signage. His signature gem style of work is a geometric breakdown of letterforms with shadows and highlights incorporated to create depth and movement. His work has been featured at the Portland Museum of Art and the Center for Maine Contemporary Art in Rockland. Before I turn it over to Jorge, I wanted to thank our series sponsors, Stroudwater Lodge and our presenting sponsor, Northern Light Mercy Hospital. This event and the important local journalism we produce each day is made possible by our sponsors, advertisers, and you, our readers. If you are already a subscriber, we appreciate your ongoing support. If you're not yet a subscriber, I hope you'll consider a subscription today. You'll find a link with the details to our variety of packages in the chat or at pressherald.com/subscribe. Without any further ado, please welcome to the virtual stage, Jorge Arango and Ryan Adams.
Oh, Jorge, you're muted.
Thanks, DJ. And hey, Ryan, it's always great to see you. How are you doing?
Hey, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, our pleasure, really. I've seen your work for years before I ever met you, actually. I've been seeing it on buildings all over Maine, and I always thought it was really cool, but not until I came to Portland and started living here did I really get to know your work, and it's really wonderful. So
Thank you.
congratulations.
Appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Sure, I'm a fan. So why don't we start with just telling us a little bit about where you're from, how you came to art, like early experiences of art, just for people who might not know what you do and who you are.
Sure. So I'm born and raised here in Portland, Maine, where I continue to live. I guess my start with art and creating things, it goes back farther than I can actually remember. My mother tells me that when I was a really little kid, I was always had papers sprawled out on the living room floor, and I was either copying things out of comic books or off of cartoons or something. So I've always been drawing and creating. There was kind of a significant moment when I was about 10 or 11 years old when I received a copy of the book Subway Art by Martha Cooper and Henry Chalfant. It chronicles the subway graffiti movement of the 1970s and 80s. And I was just completely blown away. I mean, you could see images of the kids that were painting it. So these are young people in the city just creating this movement. And I was just like, what is this? How do I see more of it? And, it was before kind of the internet days. So I just became kind of obsessed, and I started kind of redrawing things that I would find in magazines. And once I was old enough to kind of get out of the house, that's kind of when my unconventional arts education began. It was through painting graffiti and participating in that movement. And through that, is where I really found my love for letter forms and color, and just the ability to paint large and fast was just, I mean, I absolutely loved it. I fell in love with it. I didn't really know that there was kind of another stage to that until the early 2000s. I was asked to, someone was familiar with my work, and they asked to paint the interior of a new build out for a restaurant that they were putting together. So I was kind of confused as to why they would want to, I was like, you want to paint me a spray paint? But that was my introduction into the world of creating murals and working with clients, and that whole process. And again, it was kind of a light bulb moment where I was like, wow, this felt great, and it felt good to have the work appreciated. And I think I can kind of expand upon this. So from there, the murals started. Just kind of, I guess it was kind of the snowball effect. I guess like one person, because again, this is before social media or anything like that. So I just, kind of kept going on that route, which it's kind of a strange trajectory because I was already painting murals when I found out about sign painting and kind of hand lettered signage. A good friend of mine, Will Sears, was painting signs at the time, and I was like, "Oh, letters, I can do that." And I showed up, and it was so much more difficult than I'd expected. So that kind of brought into the sign painting realm, which it made me kind of study letter forms in a different way. Merging these two together eventually was this geometric gem style of work that I think I'm most known for. And I started creating murals in this style. And then, of course, in order to prepare for murals and things like that, I would have to do a lot of drawing. So that ended up kind of translating into the studio. So it's a weird, it didn't go, kind of like school,
Right.
studio. It was a kind of all over the place. But
Well, let me ask you too, because a lot of those, that graffiti movement, the Rolling Thunder writers and the soul artists and Dondi and Future, all those guys, right? There was a kind of illicitness to what they did because they were doing it under cover of night and it was illegal and it was all right. So there was a kind of excitement about it around that. Was that ever a period that you went through before you started doing murals that were officially sanctioned or you were commissioned to do?
my memory's a little fuzzy, but it was, I was young, and yeah, I mean, to me, what I consider graffiti to me is there's an illegality to it. So that is part of that realm. So, like I said, memory's a little fuzzy, but it was an exciting time.
Great, that's great. So, so let's talk about the art that you're producing now. Now, you do. First of all, I want to make clear you do two different things. Well, you do many different things, but there is the mural, large scale type of art that you do, but then you also work in a studio, right? And you do artist residencies and you do these smaller paintings, right? So do you see a difference between those two bodies of work, or do you feel they're just tied together, inextricably?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. They are tied together because one I feel is an extension of the other. But I would say they are completely separate. With the mural work, I mean, I'm working with clients. It's just a totally different mind frame into going into it. I mean, just even from the standpoint that these things are normally fairly large, I have to kind of plan and think about how they're going to be viewed in a completely different way. And again, they're not client driven, but there's a lot of client work that has to go into it, design rounds back and forth. It's nothing like the studio practice where I just have kind of the total freedom to explore. The reason why I say they're connected is because a lot of the ideas that are worked out in the studio end up kind of going to a larger scale. And there's a certain freedom with being able to paint in the studio. I'm not so afraid to fail in the studio. When you're doing a large piece outside for someone, you can't really mess around and have a failure there. You really have to kind of go in very prepared and know what you're doing. Where the studio work, I feel as if I can just explore, which
Well,
is
you do that. I mean, when I saw, so like you mentioned, they're totally different ways of perceiving something. So when you're doing a mural, you're doing something that is really large scale, and you want the message to be seen more probably. And also you're doing things in pretty much blocks of flat color, right?
yep, yep.
In the studio stuff, the stuff that I saw at Notch 8 Gallery when you had your solo show there, which was wonderful.
Thank
Um, you were doing all sorts of things. You were spattering the canvas. You were doing like ombres. I mean, there was so many. Yeah, like this one was in that show. So there's a whole lot of different other techniques that are employed in this studio work than you do in the larger work, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think so that's a work in progress. We're seeing, obviously I'm gonna always kind of push ahead with both sides. But with a lot of the large pieces, the large murals, they once they reach a certain size, it kind of takes on a different form. I go for kind of more that graphic punch, to where it's, kind of the colors and the layout, are kind of the main attraction, and then the letters, work in there. Whereas with the studio work, it's like I said, I have so much room to experiment that I'm able to like kind of not worry about that as much. If that makes any sense.
Right, right. So then tell me also, we've had a couple of questions in the chat that are about your process. So I'm curious. So all of these have a message that is embedded in that. Do you start by painting the message and then abstract it, or do you work it out on paper? It seems like some of it could be pretty mathematical. Like how do you, what's the procession there of the work?
Sure. So the statements all kind of everything starts around the statement, what I want to put out there. It's all built around that. So I kind of keep a little like journal in my phone, just about experiences and things that happen, and then I kind of get a chance to go through them and figure out a way to kind of express these in the shortest form possible. And from there, I start by drawing out just traditional block letter forms. So it's, just the sans serif, just block letters. And with that, and I arrange the statement in the way that I want it to be seen. The geometric pattern is created based off of flourishes that you would make if you were kind of embellishing the letter, in like a graffiti mindset. So, an R kind of goes like this. If you were to embellish it while painting graffiti, you might want to swing it out or give it some movement. So that's actually the backbone of the geometric design in the background. Of course, I have to kind of connect things, balance things out, make them kind of work, but it all starts kind of with that line work. It's kind of like a skeleton to the piece. And from there, depending on what the statement is about or what I'm feeling, what feeling I'm trying to convey, I work the color palette, based off of that. So the color palette does have, especially for the studio work, a direct connection to the statement that's within there. So yeah, that's I guess basically how they come together.
So speaking of the message that you want to put out there, so some are really like lighthearted, they're I love you or yup or nope or and then other ones are pretty more hard hitting, like use the CMCA, the Center for Maine Contemporary Art in Rockland. You did this one,
Yep.
right? Which says,
It says use your white voice. So this piece was about code switching, the idea of code switching, which, being a Black man in Maine was very prominent throughout my life. And I wanted to kind of explore that here. As part of exploring that with this piece, the words use your voice are highlighted, whereas white is not highlighted, it has no highlights and shadows, as to assimilate with the background. So I guess like the statement behind this is to, use your voice, and not try to assimilate, into the majority there.
right, right. And so is there, I never knew that about the fact that the white it's not, it's more abstracted than the other words. I'd never noticed that. That's really interesting. So, there's a subtle way that you kind of, you're getting across your point, but you're making a larger universal point at the same time, right? This could be a statement of activism, use your voice, right? But then it could also, once you notice the white part of it, then it becomes something else, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Definitely. And that's, I mean, especially with pieces like this, where there's kind of that multi-layered, experience with it. I mean, it's a pretty serious statement about something that was, a serious, a thing that I really wanted to explore and put out there, but I also wanted to, and this is kind of how I think about some of these in like the public spaces, is that the color palette to this, I wanted it to be just kind of extremely engaging, like, wow, what is all this movement and what are all these colors? So that I kind of pull people in with, hey, look at these pretty colors. And then there's like, wait a second, there's a word in there. And then by the time that they realize what it says, they really sat with it for a while. And so there's kind of those different levels, I guess, of the experience of viewing it. So
Right. So, Strawberry, can we put up some of the studio work so we can look at that? Because I want to look at some of those messages too.
uh,
So they were the ones from the show. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So here, um, this is obviously in the colors of the Pan-African flag, right?
yes, that's
And
correct.
right, and the message here is hold on.
That's correct.
You told me about this painting. Can you just talk about what was going on in your head when you were doing this for
Sure,
the audience?
absolutely. This was painted at my residency at Surf Point about this time last year. This was, it's a a song. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna forget. No, Erica Badu had redone it, and it says "My people, hold on." And I can't remember exactly what had happened, but there was something in the news that we unfortunately see so often, where there's just the injustice against Black folks in this country. I want to say it had something to do with the police officer. I can't remember exactly, but it was one of those moments where it can be so exhausting, and thinking about it, seeing it, experiencing it, living it, it could get to a point where it's just like, this is too much. I just want to tune out, and you can't. You absolutely can't. I don't have that option, and I don't want to. So that idea of like holding on, like just we will be okay. We're gonna be all right. Just hold on. And like I said, that reference to my people, hold on, was kind of where my head was at with this one.
Right, right. And then yeah, and then this is total opposite end of the spectrum,
Yeah.
right? So I know that you told me this was about your daughters,
Yes.
Zoe and Nora, right?
Correct. Yep. So
And just talk about this one a little bit.
sure. So I have two little girls, Zoe and Nora, that are 3 and almost 6 on Friday. So we to say they changed my life is a massive understatement. Love my kiddos so much. And this was the statement behind it was, sometimes this creative life of juggling, the business and the family and everything, it can be a little bit overwhelming at times. And I was listening to I think it was a book on tape, and they're talking about like remembering your why, like remembering why you do these things, why you're up late working on a design project, why you're have meetings from morning to night. And it was in that moment I was like, well, this is all for them, like this is all for you. I want to build something that I can either pass to you or give you something or show you that you can kind of do what you want with your life. And so that's what the basis was behind this. And I used all of the kid colors. Just what kind of reminded me of their playroom here. So.
When this one's also interesting to me because I didn't talk about it in the review, but many of them they fit into the square frame and they go all the way out. Here you've left all this white space and just left the lettering sort of centered in the middle, which is something I'd never seen you do. So is this a new sort of thing that you're doing?
Yeah. So I've started to kind of work with form on that level. I think giving it that extra breathing room kind of gives it a whole other feel to the structure. And yes, actually I've oh my gosh, I can't think off the top of my head, but there's been a few paintings as of late, a good amount that have had that breathing room.
Right. Interesting. So, and then, yeah. And so this one I really love because I stood there looking at this painting for I don't know how long, and I could not figure out what it said. So, until you look at the wall label and you give up and you go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, but I love the palette. I love the fact that the paint application is sort of washed out, so it has a lot of modeling to it, and it looks almost completely abstracted. And I'll get to this in a minute about the cubist thing, right?
Oh yeah.
I will get to
Yeah.
that. But so it looks almost cubist, like you would be looking at a Picasso or a Rock here, right? So, so tell me about this painting, and how it came about.
Sure. So this was painted at my time at Hewn Oaks. I think this was about a year and a half ago. But I was there and I was preparing actually to show some paintings at the CMCA, and I was just I was doubting myself a lot. I was kind of like, oh my gosh, am I doing this correctly? And I kind of landed on a place where at a place where I was like, I need to just be myself. I need to just, even if it's a counter to everything, I need to just be 100% authentically me. And there's a song by The Roots called What They Do. And in the background, they're kind of saying, never do what they do. And I was like, oh, well, that applies,
Right.
I feel that, and that's what I felt like I was doing in that moment. I decided to, yeah, like you said, kind of wash the paint down a bit, because I wanted to show the strokes. That's kind of a nod to the sign painting world, where you construct the strokes that you use to construct letters are very important because that they're going to age over time and they still need to be read. So I wanted to show kind of the strokes that go into each one of these, because I think sometime when it's flattened out, if I do a good job and I hit all those lines correctly, there's kind of a little bit of the human hand missing, like at first glance. So I wanted to make sure that it was shown that each one of these things is constructed by hand, and trying to hit all those lines correctly, and yeah, kind of show that aspect off.
Right. So since we hit this topic, um, this is something that's really interesting. The first time we ever spoke on the phone, you told me this for another article I was writing, and so people are really tempted to look at this and go, "Oh, Brock and Picasso," and you go, "No, Dondi and Futura 2000," right? No, right. So there's the idea of always tying art back to white European precedents, usually male precedents on top of that. So, right. So, I'm curious about your view of that nowadays. I mean, does it keep happening? Is it something like, how do you react when people do that?
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, it does keep happening. It's so interesting to me how there's just like, it's always referenced back to this like one period of time, like nothing before, nothing after, it's just like, you have to be referencing somebody from then. It does happen. And I mean, it's honestly, what I enjoy the fact that people want to even take the time to look at it and, just share with me what they feel about it, especially if it's positive. And so I do often correct folks as in the nicest way that I can potentially do that. And I mean, it's not to say that I haven't looked at Picasso or Brock. I mean, of course, like they're phenomenal. And yes, I mean, I did look at them at some point in life, but as I was learning these, I guess, foundational aspects of my work, those weren't the people I was studying. Like you said, those early subway graffiti writers were the people that I was studying. So I am a direct result of them, not of Picasso and Brock and those folks. So
Right. So the artist Daniel Minter, who you of course know very well at Indigo Arts, told me once, I think for that same article, he said that, and this gets into a discussion that we started to have in our preview to this. He said that, people come to the art, and because they don't understand it, he's speaking mostly of white people come to this art and they don't understand it. And, like we need to categorize it somehow. We need to put it into some sort of box. And so they either have to do that, attach it to the white canon, or they just have to call it black art, or right. They're not actually open completely to what it is and what it could be if they just received it. Right.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Daniel is, I mean, one of my favorite people, and just so wise. And that is 100% correct. I see that so often, especially when you're painting using spray paint, like on canvas work and things like that. It's, you get grouped into things. Like, I was actually talking to my wife Rachel about this earlier, because we were trying to like figure out the term street artist. Like, what exactly is that? And I feel like, and she made a great point. She's like, I feel like that term is used to just make kind of new, or I guess unexplainable on their end work, just kind of palatable. Like, it's like, okay, no, that's street art, and because Rachel has been called a street artist before, and I mean, no, so that is a very good point. I mean, yeah, it's very often that you kind of get the, wait, you don't fall into what I know, so you are other. You are street artist. You are graffiti. You know what I mean? And I'm a painter. Like that's what it comes down to. Yeah.
Well, and there's a whole dimension of course, if you say it's street art, then it's implied it's black, right? And it's implied that there's like this slightly criminal aspect to it, and it's like there are all these associations that go with any kind of categorization, right?
Absolutely. It's like the urban category, it's like a similar thing where it's just like, come on, folks, like it's, yeah, no, it's a painting, it's, yeah.
Great. So, yeah, this is really interesting. In pursuit of that, I had attended a webinar that Jerry Saltz did. He's the art critic for New York Magazine, and this was about a new book that he had come out with, and there were the 5 things I'd learned about the art world. One of the observations he had, which I thought was really interesting, was that that this is the beginning of the end of apartheid in art world apartheid, right? How we're seeing a lot of more BIPOC artists than we've ever seen, and women artists, and it's like that's all you see now, almost exclusively now in a lot of the magazines. So is that something you actually experience as real? Do you think that's optimistic? Is it changing for you?
Well, I guess there's a couple ways to answer that. I hope that is the case. But my faith in that change is not so strong. I think so. I guess in 2020, I experienced it, myself and my wife Rachel experienced it directly. 2020 was a very pivotal year for all of us, but in regards to our work, it was a very interesting year. So I guess, with the cultural awakening that kind of happened, where people are like, oh my gosh, we realized, systemic racism is throughout everything that we have in this country. Like, once, I guess, the larger, companies and institutions openly recognized that and started giving, recognizing BIPOC artists, we had an influx of opportunities that was overwhelming. And as much as these opportunities were helpful, and I'm appreciative of those, there's a side of me that was pretty frustrated and saddened by it, because for the longest time I was, in the back of your mind that you're not going to get looks from certain places, or you're not going to be accepted in certain arenas. But you know, I was like, wait a minute, is my work just not good enough? You know, and so I just kind of thought that that might have had something to do with it. And then all of a sudden, overnight, you know, all these people are validating the work and saying that it belongs in these spots. So it's I hope that it continues. I really do. I genuinely really do. I think, I mean, there's so only benefits, you know, like it's great for everyone. But like I said, my faith is it's there, but it's not so strong. We'll see. We'll see.
Do you see your work in any way as a way of opening people up to more messaging, like you're putting down in a lot of those that are more, like hang on, my people, or all those types of messages? Do you see that as is there an intention there to help people see other things that they might not be seeing?
Um, I don't know if there's like a direct intention there. I try to be very I mean, these statements in these pieces are all very direct and transparent. Like these are things I'm going through like in that moment. So being that I am a Black man here, my experiences are going to be put onto the canvas. So I don't know if there's like a direct, if I'm necessarily thinking so much about that while I'm creating these things. It's more just kind of like this is what's happening inside of me right now, and I'm going to put it out there in the way that I know how to do it. If the result is that, then that's good. But yeah, I don't know if really thinking about that while I'm putting them together.
All right. Yeah, I was just curious. So, so yeah, I mean, it's not only, when I felt like you really started appearing everywhere was when the Portland Museum of Art had their Untitled 2000 show. Was that what it was called? Right, which was about the pandemic.
Title 23. Yeah. Yep.
Right, and then you created a beautiful message for the outside, which was something like "We're going to be okay" or something.
It'll be all right. Yep.
Right, right, right. So other things have opened up your, like the events of the pandemic and the isolation and all of that. So, that opened up a lot for your more reassuring messages.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So it's not, I don't want to like pigeonhole it as just this one issue, right? There are lots of things that are really bringing you out into the open more in the art world, and specifically up here in Maine, certainly up here in Maine.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah. No, I agree. It was very special. I mean, it was created in the heat of lockdown. I just quit my corporate job. I just had a 3-month-old. It was, a pretty terrifying time. So that was what I had to kind of keep saying in my mind to feel okay throughout the day, and to share that with, the city and the public, and to hear so many people, saying how it was a moment where they felt a little uplifted. And I mean, it was a very special project.
Yeah. It's like the message, the message is so important, and it resonates in ways that you might not even think. But I think of Charlie Hewitt's "Hopeful." There you go. You're going to be all right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think of Charlie Hewitt's "Hopeful," that just has taken off all over the place. It's like Robert Deanna's "Love," right?
Yeah.
Because we've been in such strife, and then suddenly this hopeful message comes along, and everyone feels like, they breathe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think having those positive messages. I mean, like I said, I'm very kind of transparent and direct with the work. So I have moments where, there's extreme joy and optimism, and I like to share that as well.
Great. So speaking of all these opportunities, why don't we talk about some of the stuff that is coming up for you? Because you've got quite a bit. I mean, I don't know what order you want to take it in. You want to start with Just Told Me?
Yeah, sure. So there's a few things happening. If anyone knows me, they know I have like probably 150 things happening at once at all times. But I guess what I can share at the moment is in March, my wife Rachel and I are going to be doing a a group show or curating a group show at Alice Gobbin Gallery down on York Street in Portland. Very excited for that. And also another project that Rachel and I are working on together, which I can talk about publicly now. We'll be doing a mural at the Farnsworth Museum in Rockland in May of this year. Let's think what else. Oh, I have a solo exhibition opening up the first week of February at Ishibashi Gallery in Concord, Massachusetts.
Oh, great.
And my goodness, what else is going on? Oh, yeah. So at our studio spaces, we have kind of a big open area that we just had walls installed in, and we plan on doing pop-up shows for local artists here. At some point, we're hoping to start at around May, June. So we'll be kind of opening this place up for events and for people to come by. So yeah, quite a few things going on.
Well, and you're not just doing this. You're also, aren't you vice president of the Ellis Beauregard Foundation?
I sure am. Yeah, I sure am. Vice president of Ellis Beauregard, which is a wonderful, wonderful foundation and such an amazing board. I was just talking with them earlier. So yeah, if anyone out there has not seen the Ellis Beauregard Foundation, I highly suggest checking out, especially Maine artists. Take a look. There's a wonderful residency program and grants throughout the year. So yeah.
Yeah, they just raised their grants. They doubled them, didn't they?
Yes. Yeah. I wasn't sure what had gone out yet at this point, but yeah, no, there's some pretty exciting things coming down the pipeline.
That's great. So is there what other sorts of things are you doing? Are you doing more large scale murals other than the Farnsworth? Is there anything coming up?
Yep. So I think of the ones that I can talk about, we are doing a pretty large one at UMO for Beryl Williams Hall. It was renamed recently. And that's another collaboration with my wife and I. Or I think looking at March for that one. That's that month's project. And then the others I don't think I can really talk about. Oh yeah, but we're doing a few.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit about Rachel's work too, for people who don't know it. I know that is the space mural still up on Congress Street?
I think that just changed over recently. But my wife, Rachel Gloria Adams, is a painter, textile designer, amazing person. I'm a little biased here, but her work is absolutely phenomenal. I feel extremely fortunate to just even be in her presence, to watch how she creates. It is just like, I can't talk her work up more. But she is going to have actually a solo show at Notch 8. It's coming up in April, I believe. So she's kind of in studio mode too. And I believe she might be doing a little more. She has a textile design company called Tachi. And I think she's going to be doing a little bit more this summer with some more Tachi releases. And oh my gosh, what else does she have going on? She's also painting murals as well. So she's busy.
That's great. So people who might not know this, Notch 8 is a recently opened gallery that she just opened this summer, and it's at 52 Center Street. And then Alice Gobbin opened the year before in the same neighborhood, just around the corner on York Street.
Yep.
So that whole area of town is sort of interesting now. There's stuff going on there that, we'll see how it develops. But it's amazing to me that, I mean, those are two new galleries in Portland. There's a new gallery on Munjo Hill called Dunes, right? So there's a lot going on, and it's really interesting how we're kind of poised for a lot, and you're right at the cusp of it. So
yeah, I love to see it. I love to see kind of the next kind of things carrying forward and new things popping up and new people bringing other folks in. I love it. Love to see it.
Do you have any expectations of things that you hope will happen in the future, or is there anything that you haven't done that you want to do?
One of the things I can't talk about is on that list, so
okay.
that's there. And I mean, I think I would like to do more of the piece together portraits. My wife and I started an initiative 2 years ago, I believe, called Piece Together, in which we paint portraits of local residents in and around, well, right now it's the East Bayside neighborhood, just kind of in an attempt to honor the folks that made this place as awesome and attractive as it is. So I'd like to do a couple more of those. I think this year it was way too busy to get any scheduled, but I would like to at least get a few more of those going for the warm weather.
Are those on buildings?
They are, yep. So they are. If you go on, that's Fox Street. So there's one on Austin Street Brewing, Rising Tide Brewing, and then Coffee by Design. So they're all kind of in that strip there.
Right. Great. That sounds wonderful. Yeah. I remember Brett Cook Disney doing some of that sort of stuff in Harlem, like just the common man pictures, or common woman pictures, but they were enormous. They were like really huge. So then,
Yeah.
it's a great idea. So speaking of those, I have a bunch of questions here. So why don't we take some of these? The first one I have is about another project I guess you did, which I didn't know about. Can you speak to any work you have done or would like to do with elementary school age students in the greater Portland area?
Yeah. So I've done a good amount of work with elementary, middle, and high school students. I just love it's and for me. There's this side of it that I kind of put myself back in my middle school years, those wonderfully awkward years, and I think if I were to have seen someone like myself that was making a living and a career out of painting, my trajectory would have been so much different. So I really love being able to spend time with students and show them like, hey, this is an option. You can really make your life what you want to make it. You can take your passion and turn it into a career. And so I've done projects with, oh my gosh, if I forget anybody, I'm so sorry, but there was Lyman Moore, Cape Elizabeth Middle School, Deering High School, and we've done murals. But I did multiple murals at Lyman Moore, and oh my goodness, that's where yeah, I'm sorry, those are the ones that came just immediately. But there have been a good amount of projects with schools.
Great. So the next question was about Piece Together, which you just brought us up to date on. What are your top needs to expand your work and to continue co-creating on projects to beautify our city?
What are their needs?
What are your top needs to expand?
Needs. That's a good question. Let's see.
It's those donors.
Yeah, I mean, funding. That's number one. Like that's how we keep it moving. And space, obviously people that are willing and open to having mural projects in and on their spaces. And yeah, I think just people that kind of appreciate it and are open to it. And yeah, I guess that would kind of explain it. Funding, number one, and then, space and open minds after that, I guess.
Great. These two are, I think, sort of about process and longevity. So are you concerned about your outdoors work's lifespan?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a side of mural painting that I take very seriously, because at a certain, you want to make sure investments are protected. It's a funny kind of area of the work. I have to study surfaces and how to prepare them and what kind of paint is going to be the best for what kind of surface and how we can apply it. And there's a lot of research and thought that goes into that sort of thing. At the end of the day, it's paint. So, you look at it, 20, 30 years later, it's going to look like it's been there for 20, 30 years. So there is this side of me that, I'm very, very concerned with that. And when I go into each project, I do like to do my research. And at this point, we're close. I don't want to jinx anything, but I feel like we probably painted on almost every type of surface that can withstand the elements. But yeah, no, that is a very important piece to the puzzle here.
Yeah, so someone else asked, does the surface you're painting on actually determine what you paint, or like what colors you use, what forms you use?
Absolutely. Yeah. So if it's going to be getting roasted in the sun, there's certain colors that will fall out faster than others. Certain surfaces you have to prep differently, so you have to think about, kind of that side of things. And I mean, my work is very geometric, a lot of straight lines. So sometimes it's a surface that's, they call it off-road painting, and it's like, it's bumpy, it's wild. So you have to kind of think about that when you're designing the piece.
Right. So I have a question from Mark Vassier, the director of the Portland Museum of Art, who said, he says, "Hey, Jorge and Ryan. Ryan, I've always loved your color sensibility. Can you talk more about your use of color?"
Sure. So, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, color has plays a key role in the emotion that I'm trying to convey, in the work that I do. So it's funny too, because I when I first started kind of working on this style, I had very much like the graffiti color palette. It was like just, interrupting, just super contrast, heavy, like just very, very bright and bold, which is helpful when I'm trying to put out certain things, but not always correct when there's a different message within there. I will credit forever my wife, Rachel, for helping me with the colors. Her eye for color is something that, I mean, it's, I don't know how I don't know if it can be taught. Like, she's just so good at just recognizing colors and what's missing. So she really helped me a lot on that. And so, yeah, so no, so I kind of tended to try out different color palettes that were a little more appropriate for the statement that's within there. I will say that recently I have started working on a lot of pieces that are monochromatic, because I realized, I always want to challenge myself, and color played a very important role, and I want to see what happens when I'm kind of, gonna have to take that out. So, yeah, that's
Yes, I actually noticed that I had never seen the monochromatic work until went to the Not Jade show, and you had one that was all black and another one that was all sort of creamy whites.
yep.
They were really kind of ethereal in a way that some of the other stuff wasn't. And the black one in particular, what was so interesting to me about that painting was the way that you achieved the sense of different depths
Mhm.
by alternating shiny and matte, and some shades had more blue in them, some had more black in them, the types of blacks you were using. So that brings me to another question that someone is asking. Looking at Never Do What They Do, I'm wondering if Ryan's ever experimented with expanding out from the canvas toward the viewer, maybe even something sculptural.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So I've been asked this question before, and I think it just, I mean, I think the work kind of lends itself to that, especially with the way that I play with kind of shadow and light. I would love to be able to try that out. But I am pretty, I, I I'm not so skilled on that front, so I would need to take some classes first to get like a 101. But yeah, no, I think that's definitely one of like the longer term goals, is to try to bring in that three dimensional aspect to it.
Yeah. Great. So I have another one here. I was a fan of the collaborative piece you designed celebrating the life of MF Doom. Do you hope to create any more music-inspired art around the city?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I've done a few portraits. I did a Lizzo portrait and I did an Anderson .Paak portrait at different times. Um, yeah, I mean, I would absolutely love to. The MF Doom wall was a group of us, and it was he had passed, or the news of his passing was about 2 years ago, and I mean, he just played such a key role in all of our lives that we were like, we have to do something to remember him. But absolutely yes. I think music plays a big role even in my work, because I just I'm constantly listening to music, and I'm so enamored by the way that musicians and lyricists can, like, just express so much in such a short amount of time. So yeah, no, but music always plays a big role, and I would love to do some more murals along those lines.
Yeah, that makes me think of your adaptability of your art to other mediums, other forums, right? So that of course made me think of like CD covers. Would you ever do a CD cover if someone approached you?
Yeah, absolutely. If the right folks, or any, I would love to. I would absolutely love to.
Yeah, is there any interest because it does have a very graphic quality, especially the larger murals do. But have you ever explored or wondered about maybe going into a kind of licensing thing or expanding the work out so that it has a broader audience?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I also do some design work. I was designing for a brewery based out of Virginia for years, where I did all the labels for them. And I've done some collaborations. I did one with Converse. I've done a few where it's kind of taking the work and putting it into or onto products where it can be kind of seen in different ways. I absolutely love that. I think it's still an extension of my practice here and my work. So I have done a few things, and I would love to continue doing them. I really like to see what the work looks like on different things. Like that's one of the 2023 goals here is to kind of spread it out that way.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there are also some dangers to it too of just getting over commercialized, and like I have a friend of mine who is a really good painter, and then he got a commission from Perrier, and his art was all over the world, and so I asked him for like a PDF so I could pitch to some of the magazines I worked with, and he put all the Perrier stuff up really up front, and the paintings sort of lost their impact. And the comment I got back from my editor, who I had pitched it to, said it was too commercial. His art was too commercial. So
Yeah, that's something that I have to be mindful of, because I mean it's tough. On one hand, I am firmly against the idea that if you have a studio practice, you can't do anything else. Like, I think that's just this antiquated just mindset where it's like, no, we need to eat and we need to be able to provide for our families as well. So I do think doing commercial work is wonderful and is great. But I the way that I try to be mindful of that in my own way is that, as I mentioned earlier, there's more of a graphic quality to kind of the larger things and the design work that I do. Whereas the paintings in the studio, there's more exploration, there's different mediums and things like that. So I try to have somewhat of a division there. But it's something I have to be mindful of. And yeah, it's you never really know when it's gonna happen, So it's like you just have to hope for the best, I guess. But
I guess you have to take it on a case by case basis.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the cash is really tempting, but you know,
It is. It is. Sometimes they are, but every as the young folks say, every bag is not your bag. So it's you have to really assess and see if it's worth it for the long term.
right. I have one more question here. And I'm not sure where this is, but she says, have you had any interest from the court, which has a beautiful large white wall on its end, just begging for one of your works?
The like the courthouse downtown, is that?
I guess that must be what it is.
I mean, if that would be a twist. I mean, I would never be against it if the project was right. I mean, hey, yeah, if anyone knows anyone there that's interested in painting a mural on the courthouse, yeah, I do it.
Yeah, yes. Oh, yeah. So someone just chimed in and said, yes, it faces Franklin.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be, considering the roots of
Yeah.
graffiti art, that would be a really interesting place to have one of those. The only more interesting one I can think of is the police station.
I know, right? Like and they're pretty much like right next to each other. So I mean, I think it would be pretty interesting, especially yeah. It'd be great.
That's great. Great. Well, so I think we're just about we've got about 5 minutes. Is there anything you want to talk about that we haven't talked about? Anything that you're doing now in the studio that's different or interesting, or anything in your life that you want to say?
Yeah, no, that's I feel like we kind of covered most of the things here. Mentioned how we're going to be opening up the studios here to do events on, and when I say here, it's on Thompson's Point. I'll be putting out more information as that kind of gets fleshed out. And again, I have a solo show coming up in Concord, Massachusetts, and working on paintings for that now. And yeah, like I said, kind of diving into the monochromatic world a little bit more, seeing what happens when I strip that away. And yeah, no, I think we kind of covered pretty much everything here.
So where can people follow all of this, the new stuff that you're doing?
Sure. Yep. So probably the most updated or the most kind of kept up to date is my Instagram, which is all one word, Ryan Writes on Things. That is kind of, I try to keep it simple. So that is the email, that is the website, just Ryan Writes on Things. My website, I'm actually in the process of updating that. So I'm pretty excited to kind of refresh that and put everything out there. But yeah, I'd say Instagram's probably the way to follow along and see things kind of in real time.
Yeah, I see Strawberries just put that in the chat. Yeah, and people are chiming in about the talk, how inspiring it is. So you've affected a lot of people.
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. That's great. I'm happy to hear that.
And someone's asking if you have any interest in designing paving patterns for public spaces.
Wow. Paving patterns? That's an interesting thought. I really love because that's something I've never thought of before, but I would think that or in the and that works out. Yeah, no, that's a cool idea. Really cool idea.
Yep. So just before we sign off, any advice to other artists that, it's like, you have each artist, of course, has a very individual path and a very individual sort of trajectory. But, what would you say is really important for artists who are up and coming?
Yeah. Wow. I would say I guess there's a few things. I would say at the core, always listen to yourself. Be 100% your authentic self, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it feels counter to what is hot and what is new. That's what we need to do. We have that ability to do that as artists, and that is, to me, the utmost importance. Be yourself. Put yourself in your work. Like, just it's scary. It's not easy, but strive for that and always hold on to that and always do that. Everyone, I feel, is going to benefit by seeing your authentic self and being able to learn more from that. So I would say, yeah, that, and just, everybody, I don't know if everybody counts, but to me, it's like just hours. You got to put the hours in, you got to you got to be in the studio. You have to, it's tough and hard because, we have all the social media and all the things and the social side of things where it's easy to get distracted. But there's a reason why you chose this path. There is something that, kind of inside you, and you're alone and working on something that made you want to do this. So remember that and keep that at the forefront as well. That's the advice I'd give.
From a reviewer's point of view, I'll just add, go to the galleries, go to the museums, see as much art as you can possibly see, take in as much as you can possibly take in, and create relationships with galleries and museum curators and so on. Really come in handy at some point.
Oh yeah, Yeah. And I think that's surprisingly easiest when you're just yourself. Like it's hard to, kind of, I mean, for a while I struggled with that. I was like, oh wait, can I? And nope, when you're just yourself, that's how you build the right relationships.
Great. Brian, thank you. Really.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was
Yeah,
wonderful.
very enjoyable talk. Please say hi to Rachel for me, and I'll send good luck to you.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Okay. They're going to scroll through the pictures, all the pictures, to end this off. That's cool.
Thanks. That was a big one.